Before we get to the sports of the day, I wanted to talk about your beginnings in newspaper. Your parents were both journalists in the Dallas area, right? Tell me about your parents, if you would, and your background.
Yeah, my parents were both in the newspaper business. My father actually, in his younger years, covered the killing of Bonnie and Clyde, which was about an hour outside Dallas. My mother was the first woman to actually cover the White House. It wasn't Helen Thomas. A lot of people think it was Helen Thomas. My mother was 19 years old, fresh out of a little town called Arlington, Texas, and it was a little town back then when World War II broke out. And my mother went to all the guys go off to war, and my mother applied for a job, and that's the only way she got it because of World War II breaking out. But she covered the White House. She was the first woman to cover the White House. So I've got a lot of that in my background. Really, neither one of them cared a lot about sports, but I did, and I went into that and been in it. Most of the time it was the newspaper business, and then as we all know, the newspaper business is kind of a dinosaur of sorts now, and they're scrambling around trying to figure out how to make money off a diminishing. Really a diminishing product. I mean, the print, daily print in large cities is going to be a huge challenge. I think the smaller newspapers around Huntsville, Conroe, some papers up near Dallas and all around the country, the smaller towns, their newspapers will always be okay, but the larger newspapers are always going to face this challenge. I think most of them will wind up being online.
Well, before you got to Houston, you worked at the Dallas Times-Herald and were mentored by one of the great sports writers and basically one of the great writers, period, Blackie Sherrod. What was it like to be around him, and what did he teach you?
Well, Blackie was, I think, the greatest sports editor of our time. And he could be a curmudgeon. He could be a crusty, but he knew both my mom and my dad, so I got away with murder at the Times-Herald when I was a young guy. And I do remember Blackie taking such an interest in young writers like Richard Justice and me and Randy Harvey, who's now at the Chronicle, and Richard used to be at the Chronicle. I mean, it's like 180 degrees from Blackie Sherrod. It just seems like everybody in the country has a Blackie Sherrod story, or they worked for him or had a friend that worked for him. And Blackie's in his 90s now and in poor health in Dallas. And that's unfortunate because he had the greatest impact on me. And I think from just the standpoint of, just figuratively slapping you in the face and saying, pay attention, son, to details and facts. I mean, a lot of times the bloggers now will just throw stuff out there and not have fact to back it up. And I think that's one of the things that was really important about growing up in Dallas as I did and working for Blackie, is he insisted on excellence in reporting and factual reporting and fairness.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.